All right, today we're diving into a classic story. It's all about pride, appearances, and, well, the absolutely devastating price of a single lie. We're talking about the necklace. Just think about that for a second. I mean, what if one night of feeling glamorous cost you 10 years of your life? Sounds insane, right? Well, for the main character in our story, that's not just a question, it's her reality. One single evening sets off this crazy chain reaction that completely turns her world upside down.
Okay, so let's get to know our main character, Mathilde Loisel. On the surface, things seem okay. She's married to a decent clerk, but inside, she is just deeply, constantly unhappy. And you might ask, why? It's because she's absolutely convinced she was meant for more. She feels she was born for this life of luxury and elegance that is just completely out of her reach.
And this feeling, this gap between her dream and her reality, it basically defines her entire existence. She physically suffers from her surroundings. The shabby walls, the worn-out chairs. You know, her husband can be perfectly happy with a simple dinner, but all she can think about, all she dreams of, are these elegant dinners with shining silver. And this really gets to the core of who she is. Her entire sense of self is just wrapped up in materialism. She genuinely feels like she has nothing simply because she doesn't have the right dresses or the right jewels. To her, those aren't just things, they're everything. They're the only things she truly cares about.
But then, one evening, a single envelope lands in her life and it changes everything. Her husband comes home all excited with this invitation to a huge fancy party at the minister's residence. And for Mathilde, this is it. This is her one shot to finally step into the world she's only ever dreamed about.
But of course, there's a problem, a big one. She has nothing to wear. So the costs start piling up almost immediately. Her husband, who's a pretty good guy, gives up his personal savings, 400 francs he was saving for a hunting gun, just so she can buy a dress. But even that's not enough. For that perfect finishing touch, she goes to a wealthy friend and borrows what she thinks is a stunning diamond necklace.
And you know what? For one night, the dream actually comes true. She is an absolute smash hit. She's elegant, she's gracious, she's just full of joy. She's the prettiest woman there, and everyone notices her. For just a few hours, she gets to be the person she always believed she was born to be. But like they say, all good things must come to an end. They get home in the early hours of the morning. She stands in front of the mirror, wanting to see that glorious reflection just one last time. And that's when the dream doesn't just end. It comes crashing down. Hard.
She lets out a cry. The necklace, the very thing that made her night so perfect, it's not around her neck. It's gone. They frantically search everywhere, in her dress, in her pockets. They even run back out into the street. But it's no use. It has just vanished. So, after a week of just frantic, hopeless searching, they come to a terrible conclusion. They have to replace it. They find a necklace that looks exactly like it in a jewelry shop, but the price? Oh, the price is just staggering. 36,000 francs. For a clerk's family, that's not just a lot of money, it's an absolutely life-destroying amount. And this is the moment. This is where they make the fateful decision. Instead of just coming clean and telling her friend the truth, they choose to lie. They scrape together some inheritance money and then they borrow the rest from loan sharks, from anyone who will lend it to them at insane interest rates. They basically sign their lives away. And that one decision, a decision made out of pride and fear, it plunges them into a decade. 10 years of just crushing poverty and backbreaking work. They now have to pay off a debt that is going to completely consume them. Their whole life just falls apart. They have to fire their maid, they move out of their apartment and into a dingy little attic. Mathilde, the woman who dreamed of servants and luxury, is now scrubbing floors and arguing with the butcher over every last penny. Her husband, he works his day job, then he works evenings, and then he stays up all night copying documents, all for a few extra coins. And this goes on for 10 long, miserable years. And the toll this takes on her is just immense. The pretty, charming woman from the party, she's gone. In her place is this strong, hard, almost crude woman. The years of hardship have completely remade her physically and emotionally. She's basically unrecognizable. So after 10 long years, it's done. The debt is finally paid off. And then, one day, Mathilde's out walking, and she sees her old friend, Madame Forestier. Yep, the one who lent her the necklace all those years ago. And Mathilde thinks to herself, you know what? It's over. It's time to tell her the whole story. And so she does. She walks right up to her and tells her everything with this sort of simple, proud feeling. She explains how she lost the necklace, how they bought a new one, and how it took them 10 years of their lives to pay for it. And you can feel her relief, right? She's content now that the long nightmare is finally over. And then the hammer drops. The moment that makes this story so famous, one of the greatest ironic twists in all of literature. Madame Forestier looks at her horrified and reveals the unbelievable truth. The necklace she lent her, it was a fake. Just let that sink in. The irony is absolutely crushing. They threw away 10 years of their lives, their youth, their happiness, all to replace a 36,000 franc diamond necklace that was really just costume jewelry worth, 500 francs at most. Their entire decade of suffering was for absolutely nothing. So, what are we supposed to take away from this absolutely tragic story? Well, there's a lot to unpack here. The story's just loaded with powerful themes and some pretty heavy life lessons.
First off, let's talk about the necklace itself. It's the key symbol, right? It perfectly represents this idea that appearances can be deceiving. It looks so real, so valuable, but it's ultimately worthless. It's just like the high society life Mathilde was so desperate for, shiny on the outside, but completely hollow. And the themes in this story are just as relevant today as they ever were. I mean, you've got appearance versus reality, the dangers of vanity and materialism. It's a huge critique of the social pressure to keep up with the Joneses. But maybe the biggest warning of all is how one single lie, just one moment of pride, can spiral completely out of control and ruin your life. So the big lessons here are pretty clear, aren't they? Be happy with what you've got, and maybe most importantly, just tell the truth. If Mathilde had just been honest from the very beginning, this whole catastrophe could have been avoided. It's a really stark reminder that pride, well, it often comes before a fall. When you look at Mathilde's journey, her transformation is pretty incredible, in a sad way. She starts with this misplaced pride, which leads her to pretense. That pretense results in a decade of suffering, and through that suffering, she finally finds a hard-earned humility. It's a tragic story arc, for sure, but it is a complete one. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. See, the necklace isn't just some old story about a woman named Mathilde. It's kind of a mirror held up to our own lives, isn't it? It really forces us to ask ourselves, in our world, which is so driven by social media and appearances, how much are we sacrificing just to look good? That's something to chew on. Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.